Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for this episode of the Business of Boutique Fitness podcast.
Yeah, excited to be here.
So excited. And for those of you who have been with us for a while and listening in, you might notice that we're a little bit different today. Yeah, we're shooting in a different format, which we're super excited about. So the first thing I want to do is say hello to all of the people joining us on YouTube today.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're making our YouTube debut, Caroline.
So exciting.
So exciting. I could not be more excited to be chatting with you today, Caroline. But for everyone who's new joining us today, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Totally. I'm Caroline. I own a hot yoga studio based in Portland, Oregon, in the midst of opening up another multimodality and recovery focused studio also in Portland. And I'm a coach at the Grow Your Studio Profitably program here at Studio Grow.
Excellent. So much experience bringing a wealth of knowledge to us today.
Absolutely. And you are too.
I am. I'm going to try to at least. So for everyone who hasn't encountered my Australian accent before, my name is Matt. I'm usually pretty memorable because of that. And hopefully you like an Australian accent,
course,
because
Who doesn't?
I've heard that. I've heard it makes it a little bit more interesting. So I have about 15 years of experience behind me in the fitness, recreation, wellness industries. Obviously Australian, born and raised, did about my first 10 years over there in the not-for-profit section and the for-profit section, mainly big box gyms and recreation centers, but I've been in the US for about 4 years now, working in the group fitness space, and I work on the Start Your Studio Profitably team with Studio Grow. Caroline, I'm so excited to talk to you today about all the secrets to a high-performing team.
Yes, me too. Team is so important. And I think we see so many clients come in with them doing every single thing for the studio, and they hold all of the knowledge in their head. And they're like, why is my front desk or my teachers not disseminating all of this information in the way I want it? And it's like, well, we haven't told them, and there is no process. And so we are here to break that down and talk about it today.
Absolutely. And people can make or break a studio,
100%.
right? They're absolutely the heart and soul, but they can also just be a real challenge that we have to deal with. So let me ask you this. When you're setting out to build a high performing team, where do you start? What's the first thing that you do?
Totally. I mean, I think part of that depends on what I want my role to be in the studio. If I want to have some time back, I need a really strong, probably sales manager is where I'm going to start, because we need the revenue to be coming in so that we can do all of the other fun things. And I think when I start looking at team members, I really want someone who's a great cultural fit, even beyond skills, right? And I think that has to start with having a strong culture and understanding of what my studio stands for and what makes us different, and why do you want to work for us in the first place? And if I can articulate that and get someone so excited about the vision I have and all of the things I want them to do, then they're essentially going to be a high performer, because they're like, yes, we are doing this. It is so exciting.
I think that that's such a good point, and that's where it all starts, right? During the recruitment round. So we will talk a little bit more about, existing team members and how we can get the most out of them. But to go right back to the start, it's recruitment, right? And I have a very similar mantra to what you just shared, which is hire for culture and train for skill.
Yes.
Right? You can always teach someone new skills and how to deliver on results and performance and all of that. But if they're just not the right culture fit, it's very difficult to train someone on their personality.
100%.
Right?
And you have to work with them. It has to be a good fit. It has to go both ways.
We spend so much of our lives at work,
100%.
right? Particularly in the boutique fitness industry, we are always at work. So we have to have that element. But I do also think it's really important that we maintain that manager team member dynamic as much as we also have the friend dynamic going on. It's important to maintain that balance. How do you approach that?
Yeah, it's tough because there has to be a balance there. I think if I want to keep someone long-term, they have to understand that I see you as more than just an employee. I value you as a person. I want to see you succeed. I want to develop you professionally. And I also want you to do a great job at this job that I need to have done now. And so I think part of that becomes like understanding, just like we have our client avatars, who's my employee avatar? What are they motivated by? Maybe it is money. Maybe it is getting coffee with me once a month. Maybe it is like a PTO day that I am going to do your job for the day. But I think we have to get to that understanding of like what makes you tick, what makes you excited, so that we can have kind of both sides. What do you think? What's important?
Yeah. Absolutely, doing all of that. I think boundaries are really important, and I think it's hard to really quantify and say do this or do that because everyone's going to be so different, right? But it really comes down to setting those boundaries and, being able to switch hats. I've always done that where I've in a meeting, for example, I'll start with banter and we'll have a laugh and all of that, and then it's very much game face.
Yeah.
Now I'm in manager map mode.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and I think part of that comes down to having really clear job descriptions for the jobs that you're looking to hire. I think, again, if we think of sales manager as an example, it's like, yes, I need a sales manager. They need to make sales. But what are the KPIs that we're holding them to? What are the hard and soft skills that they need to have? Both the employee and I as a leader need to know that up front. So there is an expectation. When we have a predetermined check-in, we know what we're checking in on. I know what you need to be preparing and working on every week, and we're very much on the same page. And I think a lot of us kind of miss that in our studios, or maybe we had that at the beginning and now we're 10 years in and it's like, whoa, what is everyone doing? They're wearing all of the hats and we need to stop and refresh and reorganize.
Absolutely. And I think when you're in the interview is your first chance to really lay that framework, right? When you're getting to know them, I really like to ask a combination of questions in that first interview, some that are really targeted on the values of my business and really figuring out who they are, what makes them tick, what's their motivation, like you mentioned. But then also having some questions that are really skill-based and really relate to the position description that they're going to be executing on, right? So to give an example of one of those questions that I might ask for both, this is a curly one.
I love it.
Right?
Excited.
This is a really curly one. And I love seeing people's reaction to this one because when I ask it, it's always the first time that someone's been asked it and you can see on their face if they've been super prepared for this role, this breaks through the facade, right? It's you can ask it a certain way, right? It doesn't have to be scary, but this is a question I like to ask. How would the person in the team who likes you the least describe you? It's
I love
tricky.
that. I love a question because I'm the type of person, I am going to be so prepared for any interview I go to. And so when I'm about to interview someone, I go in with that mentality and I'm like, what curveball questions can I throw where I'm going to get their true colors? Because that's going to come out at some point in our working journey together. And if I can just get it now, amazing.
Absolutely. And I want to do everything that I can to protect the culture that I've built in my studio, right? So I'm essentially asking that person to tell me the worst possible outcome culturally of me bringing them into my team, right? It's a very fascinating question and I've had some crazy answers to it. So
Love it.
I would suggest everyone adds that to their list for their next interview.
I absolutely will. Well, and I think even before we get to the interview process, like having that really clear org chart for your company. And again, many of us have that when we start our studios, but we get in the weeds and we're growing and doing things, and then that kind of slips to the wayside. So looking at what do we need now? What is kind of the chain of command? Like who reports to who? Ultimately, I don't want everyone blowing me up 7 days a week, 24/7. So how do we kind of mitigate that? And also the next step could be if you are preparing for growth, what are the future positions we're hiring for? Because it takes a lot of time and energy and money to bring on and onboard new people. So let's keep them for a long time. And if I can paint the picture of like, here's your roadmap here. If you hit to this point, then maybe there's this opportunity for you. That can be really exciting.
I love that. And I think it's something, I know I did this when I first started managing people at a gym. It was just kind of an oversight because I just thought that everyone knew what success looked like in their role, right? I kind of figured, how can you not? But unless we're clearly defining what success looks like, because it is going to be different for each of these roles, how do we know what benchmarks to measure people against and how to manage their performance and, to make sure that they're getting a sense of fulfillment as well, right? We want our staff to feel like they're achieving things and that they're motivated. So how do you typically go about, defining KPIs or defining success for your team members?
Yeah, I mean, each role will have predetermined KPIs, maybe 3 to 5 that I'm holding you to, that like these are the non-negotiables. But we'll also have a strong one-on-one cadence and we'll build this out in the onboarding so I can start to understand like what are your, as an individual, true strengths and what are not weaknesses, but like what can I help you develop? And so I want to tailor those KPIs to get the employee to understand, like, I see where you are, I see where you could go. And I'm always very clear with people, like, I would not be putting this time and energy into you if I didn't think you could do it. So this is an investment in you because I think you can go the long haul with us. And so I'm going to push you out to your edge and outside your comfort zone because that's where we grow and that's where we're going to do amazing things.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever had the situation, right, where you've seen someone's potential, you've seen what they're capable of, but they're just not really interested in getting there? Like it's that skill versus will thing, right? Which is something I always have in the forefront of my mind managing teams, is people can have the skill to achieve great things. But if they don't have the will to do it, then what's the point? So how do you kind of approach that when you've got a staff member who you think could just take on the world, but honestly, they're happy just chilling, doing what they do?
Well, it's interesting. And I see that a lot in this industry because I think a lot of owners don't get into owning a studio because they want to be the best CEO, business owner in the world. They love yoga. They love Pilates. They love group fitness. And not that those two can't go together, but they don't necessarily go together right away. And so I see that with a lot of employees too, of like, this is a rock star instructor. They're great with clients. They're going to be great with sales, but they don't love it. And so it's kind of like painting that picture of, here's where this could take you. Do you want to teach 40 classes a week? That might lead to burnout. Here's an opportunity I'm giving you and how I see we could do both sides. And it won't always be a good fit. But I know in my own business, you know, I've kind of created roles for people who are really key players and are really strong and have these skills. And maybe I didn't know I needed someone on teacher training curriculum from the onset, but man, this person really fit into this role and kind of created a role for themselves. And so I think we can hit that too.
Yeah, I really like that. Kind of the parts of the role that they need to do that they're maybe not the most passionate about, making them as efficient as possible, right? So limiting the amount of time that they have to spend on it for the maximum amount of return, right? Sales, for example. So freeing up time for them to then really focus on their passion projects, with the caveat that those passion projects align with the goals of the business.
Absolutely.
And are actually delivering a return, right? Because I've also had that situation where people have been like, I just love talking to clients, like client connection and community is my passion. I'm like, great, that's all about what we do here. But you spending 40 minutes talking to a client after class is not really it.
No. But I think I also like to make it clear, like, I love a collaborative work environment. I don't want to be the one coming up with the ideas. I want us all to feed in together because we all see different parts of the business from a different lens. And that's what's going to lead to the most like fulfilling growth, the most like team that is just so bought in and is like the number one just advocates for our brand. That's how I'm going to bring more people in, because the people I have working here truly love it. They feel valued. They get a lot out of the work that they do. And that's just going to help propel us forward in so many ways.
Yeah, no, I agree. So let's talk a little bit more around then how we facilitate that collaboration, right? Because it's so important. We've got the collaboration that needs to happen one-on-one between the team member to make them high performing and myself as the manager. But then we've also got the team as a whole, right? So how do you do that? Do you hold meetings, team meetings? And you mentioned one-on-ones before.
I think setting this up in your onboarding is so key, and really looking at onboarding as, okay, tightly the first 90 days, but so much longer than that, like really setting an employee up for success and kind of stair-stepping them into all of the avenues that you want them to run with in your business. So absolutely setting up a one-on-one with their direct leader, that is going to be key, and keeping that pretty open. Like I always want to know what's on the employee's mind. I might have an agenda, but I want to see where you come in. I want to know what's going really well, and conversely, what you don't think is going really well. And does that even align with what I thought was happening in your position? It often doesn't, which is an interesting thing to see.
Two-way feedback.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And I love, we have to, in those meetings, open ourselves up to being a little bit vulnerable, right? And putting our ego to the side and asking that question, what could we be doing better? Right? What would make you happier to come to work every day? I think that's such a great question. So we've all sat in these one-on-one meetings with managers in the past, I'm sure, where we've just kind of chatted, bantered for 20, 30 minutes. And then it's like, okay, anything you want to chat about? No,
I'm great.
Which we love, right? Great to build that connection. But also these one-on-ones have got to be strategic and they've got to be results-based, right? So how do you approach your one-on-one meetings that you have with team members to make sure that they're a really valuable use of time and they're going to walk away from it being a high performer?
Yeah, I have a form that I have people fill out, and I will fill it out for the one-on-one as well. And again, I want to see what you're coming in with and what I'm coming in with, where we align, where we differ, and what we can work on from there. I think it's also a great opportunity to celebrate wins, because as much as these meetings are about driving performance and moving you forward, I also know that it's not going to be productive if I am just constantly like, do this, do this, do this. So I need to celebrate the wins, even if it's really small. Like, hey, you filled out that shift report 7 days in a row. I know it is a pain, but it made my life so much easier. And now I can see all these amazing things that you're doing. Thank you. I wouldn't have known otherwise. And so I think building in both is key. What do you think? What's been successful for you in one-on-one?
Yeah, definitely the agenda, right? So having a set agenda that's consistent each week with different sections that are covered to chat about, right? Something that I also started doing in the last couple of years was making that agenda a live document that everyone had access to prior to the meeting, so that over the course of the week, you could type notes in, right? Be like, okay, I want to talk to Matt about that, or I want to, celebrate that moment that I saw Caroline have at the front desk earlier, right? So keeping it as a collaborative live document, I think really helps. And something else that I put in there, which I found to be really, really successful, right, is having a section dedicated to talking about that team member's personal development. Right? People love to talk about themselves.
They do. True.
Let's call it, right? And if you have a section in there where it's like, what skills do you want to develop, right? Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? And just really give them the opportunity to talk about where they're at in terms of their professional development. Even if it's not, I want to get a pay grade raise, or I want to take on a new position or a promotion or anything like that, we can always be developing, right? So having the opportunity for people to just talk about themselves at the end, it's a nice way to finish it.
And I think that can set you aside as an employer to some extent. Like, not everyone is giving their front desk associate the time to really talk about what makes you tick. Like, what is exciting to you? What brought you to this job? And how can I support that spark that you had coming in here?
Absolutely. And just because they might not be looking for a career in fitness, right? This might be their side hustle while they're in college, they're studying, whatever it may be. It does not mean that they can't learn skills which will transfer really well into their chosen career path.
For sure.
So, yeah, okay. I really, really like where we're going with that. So something else I want to dive in with you on that you just brought up, which I think everyone loves doing, is celebrating successes, right? It's such a feel-good moment. So I love that we celebrate them in the one-on-ones, but I'm also a huge fan of public displays of recognition, right? Doing it in front of people's team members and their colleagues makes them feel really good, right?
Well, yeah.
So how do you feel about in the moment celebrations?
Totally. I think that's so key. I think, yes, it's going to make the team member feel good. And I'm like, yeah, they're doing the thing. That feels awesome. And then I think there's that subtle competition that some of your other employees are going to be like, well, I would really like to be called out for this cool thing I'm doing. And maybe that didn't get seen. So I'm going to step it up a little bit. And that is a fun, subtle, psychological thing happening that we won't be mad at if that happens.
Totally. So, okay, this question just came to my mind, right? We're talking about how happy and joyous these moments are, and this is a really feel-good part of our conversation, but I want to totally flip that on its head for a second, right? I think that there is some nervousness amongst business owners and managers that if we are pumping someone up so much, that they're going to have actually a negative reaction to that in terms of getting a big head, right? Thinking that they run the place, or just not even maybe asking, but kind of demanding a pay raise because we've been giving them so much good feedback and telling them they're the best thing since sliced bread. Yeah. So have you ever encountered that, firstly? And also, how do you balance that?
Totally. But I think we can bring this in one-on-ones and group meetings where I want you to see all the things that are going really well, but all of us have things we can work on. And I make it really clear with my team, even I as the leader, there are things I'm working on, and I am very open about that with everyone. So you can see there is always room to grow. And something I like to do in a team meeting is we're all going to share our goals. Because I want everyone to see where their unique role fits into the broader vision that the company has. I think that's important. But also what are we working on? What didn't go so well last week or last month? And how am I going to remedy that? And maybe it's some interpersonal thing throughout the team. And so great, we're all here. Let's talk it through. Or it's this thing. And we can all, I think it's really key to kind of get both sides of it to mitigate some of that ego, that big-headedness that we might fear.
Yeah, for sure. I think the team dynamics around a high-performing team is a really interesting point, right? And kind of like you mentioned just before, that element of competition that could come in when you're praising someone in front of others and then that competitive side coming through. Do you think that there's a risk at all around praising someone and then someone else feeling like that's favoritism? Or why am I never getting praised? And rather than encouraging them to work harder, it actually makes them feel a little bit dejected.
For sure. I think there's always a risk of that. And in my mind, and maybe this isn't right, I'm just maybe you aren't a great fit for the team. Like, there are going to be times when someone has their best week ever and you have just had your worst month, day, year, whatever, and nothing is going your way. Your time will come if you believe in that. And I still have you on the team because, again, I believe in you. I'm invested in you. We're going to get there. So I think being able to balance that. And again, it's like, maybe this isn't a perfect cultural fit, and that's okay. Doesn't have to be the perfect job for everyone.
Absolutely. And I think there's an element of we're all holding hands, heading in the same direction as a team, but everyone is walking on their own path, right? So just because Caroline's getting praise today because she did a great job and Matt's in a bit of a rough patch right now, doesn't mean that Matt's not great or that Matt's worse than Caroline, right? Totally. We're just on different paths. So I think that that's where those one-on-ones really comes into, having that touch point, level setting. And if there were any of those feelings start to rise up, that would be the forum to address those in. But also, I'm very much of the perspective of don't make decisions based out of fear. So don't not celebrate Caroline's great work because you're scared that Matt's going to have an adverse reaction to that. Right?
Totally. And now when we think about this, I think there's also an element of leadership on the owner or the manager's part that has to come in here that sometimes feels scary and like a lot, or maybe something that I've never really had to do because I've just been wearing all the hats. Where do you take that owner or that manager who has to start doing these one-on-ones or giving this feedback or praise? How do we ease them into it?
I think preparation is key, right? Would you agree with that? Because I'm very type A in that regard. So I am going to over prepare in advance, right? And I think that regardless of your personality type, particularly if this is a new, regular cadence that you're introducing with your team, a new format of, way of operating, then you have to be prepared for it. Build yourself an agenda, write up your talking points, and just really, rehearse it. Practice what you're going to say. It makes a big difference.
Totally. And I mean, we talk about that with so many of the roles in the studio, right? You're going to practice your sales call. You're going to practice your instructor queuing, all of these things. But we do that in leadership as well. And it is important. And it's going to make you feel more confident and comfortable giving both the praise and having those hard conversations with employees, which is inevitable.
It's such a good point, right? When we're instructing, we always get on the reformer and test out if that combo works, right? When I was a personal trainer, I was always doing the sessions ahead of time to make sure it flowed with my clients. So why would I not do that with one-on-ones and team meetings and difficult conversations and all of that? Okay, so let me summarize this for us, right? So we start at the recruitment phase, right? In that phase, we're really making sure that we're hiring people based on values, culture alignment, because we can train the skill set after, right? Anything else that you feel is really important to add to that recruitment piece?
I think, again, just having your org chart, having really clear job descriptions with KPIs that, again, we can kind of personalize to the person we end up hiring, but having that from the start so you really know what you're going in looking for.
Absolutely. And then defining a high-performing team, right? The whole basis of this conversation today is building high-performing teams and the secrets to how to do it. But if you don't know what a high-performing team is, and it's going to look different for everyone, so what does your high-performing team look like? You have to start there. Write it down, right? Do an exercise around it. We always do that with mission, vision, values, right? We write down some ideas, we brainstorm, and then we kind of take ourselves through a process. And I think that doing that, to be really clear on what defines a high-performing team for you in your business, is where this all has to start.
Totally. And I think so many of us, we put so much thought into our mission, vision, and values and what the client experience will be like. And that is so important. But also, what is our employer brand? What is the experience that we want our employees to have? Because if we don't have that thought out, we're probably not going to keep them very long. And we're going to be stuck in this recruiting phase endlessly. And that's not where we want to live.
Mm-hmm. So we've recruited our dream team, right? Based on our values. And we've asked those, curveball questions on values, but also on skill. We've clearly defined what success looks like and a high-performing team looks like in our studio. How do we then start executing on it, right? One-on-ones, team meetings, collaboration, all of that.
Yeah. And spend time defining what your onboarding look like. And yes, it will change by role, but have a template that lays out, okay, month 1, week 1 through week 4. This is what we're doing. This is the goal all the way through those first 90 days. So you have a template so you can onboard employees easily, but also your employees have an idea of where they're going. And I can see why I'm doing this thing this week because next week, wow, I have a big task that I have to uphold. I got to be prepped for that.
Yep. So we've set them a really clear journey, right? Everyone knows exactly what they've got to achieve, when they've got to achieve it. The path is laid out in front of them. And then we just get to celebrate and recognize every step that they take in the right direction.
All of it. Yeah. A couple of hard conversations sprinkled in there, but mostly good, fun times. And yeah, that's what we want to see.
What, out of curiosity, what is your favorite way to reward your staff? Because particularly if my pockets are feeling pretty pinched right now, how do I get that recognition and really, hype them up without it making me break my bank?
I have done, in lieu of a team meeting once a quarter, I will set up an experience for them that I don't go to. I just set it up. And I find that's great for both the team camaraderie, and also they get to do this fun thing. I think also there's some element of we all ended up in this industry for whatever reason. We love group fitness. We're passionate about this, but we get so in the weeds of the admin of it all, especially in these roles. And so bringing them back to no, it's fun and exciting, and be a client for once and just enjoy it is strong. But I think, again, coming down to what do your employees want? Do they just want to get a cup of coffee with you? Maybe you're in your head I need to give them this massive raise, and they don't even really want that.
Right. I really like leveraging partnerships for this as well. So other businesses in my local community setting something up, maybe it's a spa or a wellness retreat or something like that, where they will open up their cryo and their contrast therapy and their red light therapy to my team for a couple of hours. And in return, let's have their team come into the studio for a class, because that's also an entire studio worth of leads that we're bringing in. So win-win on that one.
We've likely got the same clients. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Let's share.
I did not have to open my wallet for it either.
Beautiful. I love that idea.
We love that. So I think that's a really good way to start building yourself a high-performing team.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think if you're listening and you're man, I don't have that job description, or I don't have that org chart, just pick one thing to start with. Again, you don't have to do all of it at once. Be one-on-ones. That's a brilliant idea. I'm going to do a one-on-one with my manager this week, and then do it once a month, or whatever your cadence is. Just pick one thing and start running with it.
Great way to start, right? And something that I've done as well when I've come into existing studios in a management position, right, is doing those one-on-ones and really just trying to understand who that person is, right? Doing a little bit of a personality profile on them, because the way that we communicate within our one-on-ones and the way we lay out the goals and the pathways is going to be a little bit different for everyone as well. So if you've got an existing team in place, just have a think about who each person is, what makes them tick, their communication style, so that you can really be tailoring this rollout to make it really impact them and really resonate with them.
Yeah. And again, that's something we talk about so much from the client perspective, but often we do not reflect it back to our team. And if our team doesn't feel that, then the client experience is going to be disjointed.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. This was great, Matt.
I cannot wait to just see all these studios, teams take off, go through the roof, and start smashing those results out of the park.
Amazing.